Welcome to another episode of Trap Talk. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mike Blaisdell. We also have co-host Ricky Marshall Jr. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hey, thanks.
Ricky,
hello, everyone.
Would you do the honors of introducing Mike? I know he doesn't need much introduction, but...
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're here with Mike Blaisdell. Mike's from Keene, New Hampshire. I've known Mike for some 48, about 30 years, since I was about 18 years old. Mike's a 13-time All-American. He's the 2005 Eastern Zone Singles Champion, where him and Brian Whalen and KO, set the shoot-off record of 575 that year, along with, I think, 199, if I'm not mistaken, in the event, Mike.
Yeah, 19 of them, 199s.
Yeah. Wow. So Mike's an Eastern Zone shooter, but Mike does travel out to the West Coast. Mike's been around a long time. He first started shooting in 1975. And I did a little background because Mike did years ago take a lesson from me at the Grand in Vandalia. But Mike's, this year, you'll be pushing right at 300,000 registered targets.
That's correct.
So that's a lot of shooting. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Ricky. Thank you very much.
You're a wealth of knowledge, obviously a very distinguished career, a lot of wins from coast to coast and a lot of targets. Just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, Mike. What's your story? What got you into trap shooting and what keeps you passionate about the sport we all love?
My family had a sporting goods store. In 1973, they had this National Hunting and Fishing Day, and we were a vendor there. And it happened to be at a small trap club up in Langdon, New Hampshire. I mean, it was in the boonies. And so after I got to get out a little bit and see, you could try everything. They had pistol shooting, rifle shooting, and they had this trap shooting. So you shot one shot from each post, and I kind of liked it. And this guy walked up to me and he said, geez, you shoot pretty good. He said, we have a junior team down in Keene, and we'd like to have you come, try it for us. And that's where it started, right there in 1973.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. So for our new shooters that are getting into the game, what do you think is important? Because I know you're a coach, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later in the show, but what do you think are some important things that newer shooters can do to get involved with the sport and then also to better their sport?
To do what I still do today, and I did way back then, I went and watched all the best shooters I could. I mean, when, in New England's a really small area. I mean, you guys got states bigger than the New England areas. I mean, especially if shooters are involved. So I had a limited amount of people that I could go watch. And then I get to meet Koye, and Kay, I went to one of his classes and stuff. And so he was a big time shooter. I mean, I didn't realize how big he was. And along with another guy, Frank Little. And they came up into the New England areas to shoot in some of the smaller shoots. It's kind of interesting because they would travel back then with Gene Anastasio. Remember Gene Anastasio? Yep. And Woody Brown? They really were great people. And they, in fact, brought a brand new shooter to the New Hampshire State shoot way back, a guy named Chris Vendel.
Oh.
So we kind of got, a lot of people, they came up here and shot, and we got to see some, Chris was just starting along with I was, but, Frank Little and Koye were the people, in the not New England, but in the East Coast area. Then, of course, you had, my great friend, Dennis Beveau, who passed away. I mean, Dennis was just great, not only a great human being, but he was a very, very good shooter. I think Dennis won over 50 Vermont state titles, and of course he was the Grand American Handicap champion.
Yep.
He beat I think it was Keith Ditto. He beat in the shoot-off. He had a hunt. I was on the squad with him with, there was, Darrow, Handy, myself, Billy and Zaldi, Phil Wright, and Dennis. And when he broke the 100, and it was a special day, and especially for his mother to be there. But, that's kind of where I would start my career and go out, and then when I got to travel, because all I had to work with was the Trap and Field magazine, and I looked at all these people that were in there, like Dan Orlick and Leo Harrison and Brad Deisinger. I mean, you could go down the list of all the greats. And when I first got to travel a little bit, the first time I ever met Leo was at the Ohio State shoot. I was a guest of a friend who had a free ticket, and I went out there, and I'll never forget it when I saw him walking down the sidewalk there, because it was at the old Grand. And I go, it's Leo Harrison, and I said, should I go up and talk to him? I was a bigger fan than I was a shooter, but that's what I do. I would go watch Leo. I mean, I still today, I go watch Ricky. Anybody who I, have a lot of respect for in the game has what we call it, top end shooter. I go to watch them and see what I can pick up from them. And of course, being approachable, you can talk to them too. And I think that's what a lot of people should do. They should go out and develop their style by watching these great shooters.
Well, and that's one of the things, Mike, you're just like I was. I mean, I remember my first Grand in 1988 in Vandalia, walking the line and finding people and seeing Leo. Of course, I was fortunate, as you knew, my coach and mentor, Frank Hoppe. Yeah. Frank was one of his best friends was Leo.
Yeah.
So they shot together occasionally, but at the Grand, I happened to see Leo. I was 13 years old, and he waved at me. I'll never forget that. And I was like, "Are you talking to me?" Yeah. We went over there and chatted a little bit, and then we watched. And that whole Grand, I remember my dad. Back then, we didn't have cell phones, so he'd come walking down the line and looking for me. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm watching this guy. Someone said he's a good shooter. And it was, I watched Benias and Stafford and Leo and Steve Carmichael, Brent Robinson, even the infamous Mike Jordan, one of the top industry reps ever, Devin Harris. I mean, all these people. And I was fortunate. Gerald Chrisman, was one of the top single shooters. Yep. And what was it? Al Fiera, I think.
Yeah, from California. He had the high average that year.
Ferreira.
That's it.
Fiera.
Al Ferreira. Yep.
And I remember
when I started, he was up and coming, killing it.
Yeah. So I would go and watch these people, and I'll never forget. I had people back home say, "How'd the Grand go?" And I was like, "Oh man, I did that first year. I won. I was runner up in the overall and sub junior, and I won 2 doubles trophies, which I still have them in my office here." And they're like, "Well, what else?" I'm like, "Oh man, I watched so-and-so." They're like, "Who?" You could look it up in Trap Field occasionally, but they were like, "Oh, they're pretty good." I was like, "Oh yeah, you should see how they shoot singles or how that guy shoots doubles." Brent Robinson, he shoots a target before you can even see it come out.
He does.
So, and that's the thing I think people, the up and coming shooters, don't do, or even new shooters, young shooters, old, whatever, is go out and watch people. You'll learn more that way than honestly just talking to someone at your local gun club.
One of the other things, Ricky, too, is that I'm a big supporter of the history of this game. We all remember Dickie Baldwin. I mean, you wrote that book, The Road to Yesteryear. I mean, I still haven't cherished that copy, but I think the kids today, or the young people today, if you come up and you mention some of these people in the past, they don't know who they are. And I think that's a sad, because these are the people that built our game, from the heyday. You guys, Ricky and I kind of came in at the end of it, but in the 1960s, 70s, I mean, it was just rocking. I mean, guys were making, they go to a shoot. And some of these guys left their businesses and left their trades to go trap shooting because they could make 3 times the money, doing trap shooting. And it was like, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
And that's one of the deals is you've been doing this a long time. Mike's a family man. His wife, Teresa, she shot a little bit.
She's a state champion, New Hampshire state champion.
Now your son, Jake, he's off in college.
Yeah, Jake's a junior at Ithaca College. He's a New Hampshire state champion in singles. And, the great part is I got to shoot with my son Jake, my wife
Mhm.
Teresa, my father-in-law Ralph Wongless, and myself, and the four of us. And then it was just a very special time. Jake's all grown up now. He's like I said, he's a junior at Ithaca College. He's studying exercise science. He'll go with me. He goes, "Hey, Pops, you go on the range today?" And I go, "Yeah." He'll still go. He can still go out and break 95, 96 like nothing. And but he's turned to the sport of powerlifting, USA powerlifting. But the good thing is he's been exposed to it and he'll come back to it. At some point, he will come back to it.
Well, and I remember Jake when he was just a wee little guy when I came out and did a lesson at Keene and stayed with you and Teresa and Jake, and he was just a little kid. Now he's like, makes me and you look small. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah. It's you see, that's what happens when you feed them, they grow.
I know.
But remember that picture I sent you of you at the old Grand?
Yeah.
I mean, I just found a whole slew of pictures from back then. And a lot of these people that aren't with us anymore. I mean, I've come to that age where now I'm the old guard. I'm the guy, Ricky's coming up in there. We really have a lot of stories, and there's some stories that Ricky and I can't share with you on this program, but they're going to be memories forever. I mean, forever.
That's the one thing about this sport is it's not always about the trophies. And I've been fortunate to win a lot. So have you, Mike, and so have you, Zach.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the young pup here, but you've won your fair share. But in the end of the day, it's not always about the trophy. It's about the friendships, the memories. I look back. I mean, we like we were just talking about this. We just lost a good friend, Tom Buxman, back in Thanksgiving time, and Turbo was kind of like a second dad to me. His wife, Marge Buxman, was like my second mom. I made the 27-yard line shooting with Marge. I broke my first 100 through my 11th 100 straight from the 27 shooting with Tom. So, a lot of history there, but it wasn't always about the scores. I can think back of all the scores I broke, but it's about the memories and the friendships,
Absolutely.
I mean, like Mike, you're 25 hours from me. We talk on the phone, when we see each other at shoots, we sit down and we reminisce about the old times and good times. And that's the part of the shooting that I think the newer shooters don't understand yet, what this sport will bring to them as the years to come.
And they're fearless. These kids you watch, I watched your segment on Dagan Boyton, great question. How did you feel going into that last box, and I mean, they have no fear. I can, if I was in that position, you've been in the position, Ricky. I mean, you can explain it to somebody, but until you do it, until, in my classes, people say, geez, how can I break 100 straight? I says, well, I can teach you to break 95, but you're on your own for the last 5. That comes with experience, going through it, failing, we're in a sport that commands excellence. Yeah. We go out, if we don't break 200 in a singles event, we failed. But the great thing is the next day we get up and we get to go do it again.
That's exactly right. I always tell my students, I tell everybody, even just people we sit and talk to, they're like, God, what about this? There's always another event.
Yeah.
There's always another shoot. It's sad to say this, but you got to learn to fail before you can succeed. And you are right. I mean, last year, I had a 99.60 singles average. I missed 20 targets over 5,000. Did I win every singles event? Absolutely not. Did I win more than my fair share? Yes, I was fortunate to do that. But it's the mental game. It's getting out there and standing there. And you've done that, Mike, like we talked about when you were with your 05 singles, breaking 575 straight. I mean, that's a tough feat. There's not been many people that I know of that have done that. I think Stu Walton's, been that distance. Foster and Leo
900.
They went 900. I think the most I've ever been is like I want to say 450, 475. And I know I was whooped then. I was thinking about dinner and beer.
And the weird part about that deal is I had to get it. We were going on a family vacation. So we were in Elysburg, Pennsylvania. I had to hook up my trailer. I had to drive 8 hours, 300 and something miles to go home, drop my trailer, get in the car, drive to Quebec City, get in the plane and go to Anacostia Island for a family vacation. You might as well put me in the ocean and sent me out there to die because I was just dying from it. But you just do it, and that's what they say. When you get in these shootouts, geez, how'd you do that? I don't know. I just did it. And that's what people have to realize, that you just go one target at a time, just keep going. If anybody can get through the mental process, you guys know that. I mean, we all feel it. We all have pressure.
Yeah.
We all have pressure. We're going to learn to deal with pressure.
What's even more amazing about that is not only do you have to do it, but somebody else has to do it with you to get that far, right? Like, that's what always bothered me is like, I knew watching Leo and watching Rick and watching some other guys that they win, but I always wondered, like, how much farther could they win? Because like I watched him, I'm like, man, everybody was gone at 350, but could Leo win another 300 tonight? Like, he could have. If someone was there to push him, he could have really went the distance on that. Bringing that up, we talked about you being a coach earlier, Mike. Talk a little bit about your mental game. And I know you said get people to 95 and they've got to get their own way, but what are some things that you're doing in your mind when you're out there and you're 190 straight, 195 straight, and you're like, okay, I'm going to finish this? What are your focal points?
I'm going to give you the number one tip. You got to breathe. People, when they get pressure, stop breathing. I know I do. And that's all I focus on, is breathing through whenever it hits you. You don't know when it's going to hit you. Is it going to be 176 target? Is it going to be this one? You don't know when it's going to hit. It might be the first one. This year at the Empire Grand, I missed the first one out of the house. Ran 199. Got in the shoot-off, missed the first one out of the house. Ran the next 74 to win the Empire Grand Championship, the open division. Yep. So you can't give up. So those are the things I'm thinking out there. Some people, they get so upset when they miss a target. You got to get over it. No one's going to give it back to you. The guys are going to say, oh, you're having a tough day today. I'm going to give you that one. No, you got to suck it up and you got to go. In my teaching parts, I always give credit. My guy to start me was Kay. Kay Oye I'll just tell you, he's my mentor. He's my guy. Not because he advocated and I advocated too. You go take lessons from anybody that's out there. And Ricky will tell you this. I had some people out in the Midwest there to call me. They were going to fly in here. And I said, that's awful expensive. Let me tell you something. There's a guy out in Nebraska. You give him a call and he'll do just as good as I will at teaching you. And I said, he has more accolades than I got. But, go see him. And I took it from Frank Little. I took lessons from Ricky. I took lessons from Phil Kiner. You go down the line. I mean, and I put together my own shooting style. And that's what I tell my people, who had the weirdest shooting style of ever? I mean, was Jerry Phillips. Look at, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I shot with this guy in Virginia. He breaks 99 out of 100 from the 27-yard line, never put the gun to his shoulder. He had it under his armpit because he couldn't lift his arm. I think his name was Smitty or something. Look at Bat at the Grand, the guy in the wheelchair, shooting off the end of the barrel. I mean,
the 72-inch barrel or whatever it was.
Yeah. So you have to, and I will advocate this to people, you got to keep a book. I've kept the book since 1999. I write down everything after a tournament, what I won, what the traps were, where I was, what the weather was, because now that was 99, almost 24 years ago.
Yep.
And I'm still going back into those things and reading it, seeing little blips that I put. Make your own history. Make your own history.
I'll agree with that. I've taken a journal since I've started shooting. And when you go to Silver Dollar, you know that it's a little different than when you go to the Midwest and vice versa when you go to California on that West Coast target. And I think you go to a gun club to figure out what they're throwing, just like golfers go to golf courses to figure out what they're playing. And even then, it changes year to year based on your weather patterns, based on humidity, based on light, based on the maintenance of the machines. I mean, all of those things. Thank you for sharing your mentor with us, Kay. I have watched you shoot, and I know Kay's style is very much up in the air and waiting for the target to kind of get to his barrel and then making left to right lateral movements. How is your style different than that? Or is it pretty mirrored? And kind of walk us through what you're doing at the tip of the gun when you're out there shooting.
You know, I've gone back and I remember go back into when I started shooting. I was a one-eyed shooter. I started as a one-eyed shooter. You know, I made the All-American team as a one-eyed shooter. And then I switched to two eyes. And the year I did that was the year, I believe it was Ricky and I were the only ones at the Grand that had the 300. I had remember that? And it was my first 100 in doubles. So it's him and I mean, this is for a ring. You know, there's only two guys, you know, with all of them. And I'm going, this is my chance. This is my chance. And I go out and shoot like 86 in the handicap. You know, I am not a very good handicap shooter, and that I'll admit that. So I have struggled to work on that. And it was Tommy Wilkinson and Jerry Russo. They said, Mike, you got to go to two eyes. So I took the time and I switched my eyes and I trained my right eye to be dominant. And I've been a two-eyed shooter now ever since then. But if you go through, I have brought my stuff and brought it down in the house. They always said, well, you got a two-eye shooter, you got to keep your eyes up above, you know, and so you have all the advantage of not moving the targets. Moving the gun. You don't have to move it so far. Well, you know, over the years, I've come back down on the house. You know, I'm listening to Ricky and Dagan and all those stuff. I mean, I had Pat Lamont here for Thanksgiving, which is just, this kid is, I shouldn't say kid, this young man is incredible.
He's on fire.
You know, he is unbelievable. And to talk to him about what he does and stuff, he's so simple. He's so simplistic, you know.
He's like, I just shoot the target.
Yeah, and it's true. He's not goofing with us. That's how he is. He has the same setup, you know, that he has, you know, whatever. I shoot with him. I'm going to shoot with him for the Spring Grand. And I will sit there and I'm in awe. I just watch him before I shoot or after I shoot. I'm looking at him. I'm watching. And he's up in the air. So again, back of the house, front of the house, you know, I'll say right now, when I'm coming out to Tucson, I'm going to be about a foot over the house in singles. I'm going to be right on the lip in handicap, and I'm going to be right up where my singles is for the first shot of doubles. That's my game plan. Yep.
Yeah. And then, so you said something that I really want to spend a second on. You were one-eyed and you went to two eyes. Okay.
Yep.
And you said you trained that. For shooters that have dealt with dominancy issues, what were you doing to train that to actually make that transition? Because the difference between seeing with two eyes versus one is like night and day difference. Would you agree?
Absolutely. But the gun movement is not that much different. Not that much different. And I've had a long discussion with Nora about this, you know, and, you know, here's one of the greater one-eyed shooters that were out there.
For sure.
And, you know, how I did it, it was funny because I just researched it, and Tommy Wilkinson told me to go see Stevie Carmichael. And I talked to Steve, and he gave me the regimen on what to do. And it was basically, you know, it was after the Grands, and I said, I'm going to do this. And even Kay said, Mike, I don't think you can do this and be successful. You've been too long as a one-eyed shooter. And I said, and that's all I need. Someone tell me I can't do something.
Can't do it.
Because I'm just, you know, because I said, I'm going to quit this game. Because if I'm going to go out here and not be able to be competitive, you know, I mean, all arounds and high overalls I lost because of my handicap shooting. I'm telling you, it kills me. So I had to make a change, and that's what people have to do is make a change, but stick with it. And so I took a BB gun and I shot it at a swinging can on a broomstick. And I did that because the BB goes so slow. I could see when I crossfired, and my left eye would take over. I'd see the BB go. So I did that. And then when I got a little bit better weather, I got a 22 with a 1 power scope, and I shot thousands. I'm telling you, 15, 20,000 rounds with that 1 power scope at a target. And I could see it happen. You will see it happen. You see your left eye take over and look down the side of the gun. Yep. And then the 1 power will take over and it'll draw your right eye to see down the scope. So I did that for about 3 months. And then I went out and shot my first round of trap. I broke a 7. I was a double A shooter at the time. I broke a 7. I didn't
just
break
a little off the base.
I didn't break into the 20s for over 7,000 to 8,000 rounds.
Oh, geez.
That long.
And it was ironically, it came to with this first spring grand I went to. I went out there with my first time to go shoot with 2 eyes at a major championship, and I broke 199.
So I think that's huge for the listener today, because you made a commitment and you said, I'm not gonna be able to win 1 eye the way I want to win. This is costing me these all arounds. I'm going to spend the time, effort to do this. And then after you spent months training with the BB gun and months training with the 22, you still went out and shot a 7. And then from there, you didn't just give up. You went 8,000 rounds and said, I'm not giving up with this until I figure it out or it kills me.
That's right. And I was able to, and I verified it. Ricky and I had a lot of conversations about that. He was telling me he was having some trouble with his shooting. And I said, geez, I am too, Rick. I just can't figure this. Maybe it's my eye again. He says, well, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to go see Andy Davidson. You remember that?
Yep.
Rick?
Yep.
And he says, because you got to take care of your prescriptions, because if it changes a little bit, it's going to change. And he was absolutely right. So I kept up on my prescriptions, and the doctors would tell me, yeah, Mike, you pretty much got it, but we're going to put a little bit more tweaks on that side so we don't get that, and plus I use a blinder. I'm a big advocate of the blinder at the end of the gun.
So because one of those blinders at the end of the rib to block you from seeing that side. And I know Harlan has that on his gun. You have that on your gun. I believe Vendel has it on his gun also. Is that true?
Yeah. And Kiner has it on his gun. Kay's the one that developed that in 1968. He had a student that was crossfiring, and he put a piece of that that dyno tape. Remember that dyno tape?
Yep.
And then he actually came up and got a piece of metal. It was an old hacksaw blade, what it was, and put it on the sides of the guns for people. And I find that now I can shoot with 2 eyes without the blinder. But what happens is when you get tired, my left eye will have a tendency to want to take over. So all that really is a little safety catch for me.
It lets you know it's happening, and then you can suck back onto the gun with that right eye, correct?
I don't see any, when I have that blinder on, I don't see any deviation, but I will see it if I don't have the blinder on.
Got it.
Now, Mike, have you ever used the tube sight? So it's similar to the blinder, but it's a long tube about, I guess 3-4 inches long
with a green dot.
It's got it's a green, white, orange, whatever. So that's what Dustin Klein uses. Dusty Klein, who won the Clay Target when he was 18. Dusty is a left eye dominant, and he shoots 2 eye with that sight tube.
Yep.
Because
I've seen him, but I haven't used it.
He likes that better than the blade, because he said occasionally that blade, he goes, oh, I see it, kind of a weird look, where this way, all I can see is with that tube is I can see with my right eye, and that's it.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. That's another option for people struggling with this.
It really looks like looking through a straw. And when you're looking through that straw, at the end of it, there's a glowing worm or even a bead. I know people have put the straw there and left their original bead, and that works too. But it's just causing your right eye to be the thing that's driving the gun. And I think there's so much more depth perception when you're using 2 eyes versus 1 eye. I mean, I know when I've taught people and they've got that eye closed, they have a hard time reaching out and knowing distance on a target versus, I mean, even if you if you're going to do one eye and you use a tape or a patch or a dot, I feel like you still get more peripheral vision with that dot than you would closing the eye and pulling the muscles on the head. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you get zero depth perception with your eye closed. Now with tape or a blinder, you have the depth perception. So you can tell, because I'll use that, or I have used a straw one time in a class. I was teaching somewhere down south, and a guy was struggling, and I said, "You're left eye dominant." Nope, I'm right eye dominant. I did all the tests, and you could tell, he's like, and he last minute bring it to his right eye, and I'm like, "Listen, I'm going to try something." And I went inside. They had a bar there, and they had a straw. So I grabbed the straw, and I grabbed some just basic, masking tape, and I taped this straw, and it was about 5 or 6 inches long on his rib. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I just want you to shoot the target." He mounts the gun, and he's like, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh, well, next thing you know, it was pull bang, pull bang." And he's like, "Rick, I think you might be right. I might be left eye dominant." He goes, "But I really see that." And I'm like, so he shot that way. He was basically a weekend shooter, and he came to the Southern Grand. I'll never forget. He came down to the Southern Grand that one year. He shot like 100 singles, broke like 98 or 99, his career high. He still had that straw in there, and he goes, "This thing's getting pretty ratty. What do I do?" And I'm like, "Stop by McDonald's and grab some extra straw." I mean, it was funny though. It worked.
I would say you to charge him $99 and said that's a Rick Clarkson special.
Listen, Zach, my last name is not Nanini. Okay.
Kay used to take in classes and take target boxes, and he'd cut them up with scissors, and he would include everything on the left, and you'd have a little window with that target, and he'd staple it to the brim of your hat. And people would show up and shoots, and they just believed in it so much they'd leave that hat on with that target box on there. But he really had a lot of stuff early on, that pretty innovative. I've always said, if you get guys like Ray Stafford, if he ever, I'd love to be inside his mind. My little friend Mike Pillas.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we talk about if somebody people have for knowledge. I mean, if they just write it down, and Kay has written some of it.
Kay's written a couple books. It's funny. I mean, I'm 48, but I've had some people ask me, like, "Why don't you write a book?" And I said, "Well, I'm gonna have to wait for a lot of these people to be deceased. There might be a lot of pissed off people, No,
I think it's out there. I think, look at, Nitro wrote a book. Remember that guy, Russell? Remember that? That James Russell. Okay. I buy everyone's.
Trapshooter Secrets 2. I've read those books.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got the Little Shooting Handbook, Frank Little.
Yep.
The person who I'd like to see write a book that didn't, at least from my knowledge, Ray never wrote a book, did he?
No, and I asked him about it, and he has no interest in doing it. And he said, "I'm not a writer." I said, "Well, get a ghostwriter, do something."
Yeah. Well, I'm not good at spelling it, but all right. You just got to interview the guy, right?
Oh, man.
Well, you look at Steve Carmichael.
Yes.
Carmichael's written 2 books now. I'm almost all the way through his second book.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve's probably our all-time greatest left-handed shooter.
I got the book right here.
There's the second one.
So we're little sneak peek, but we're going to have Steve come on to the show here in a couple of weeks and do an interview talking about his book. So, I mean, if you don't know about Steve Carmichael, I mean, he's the man, and he's got a lot of good knowledge, and obviously knows his way around a shotgun.
Yeah. And I picked up stuff from him reading his books, and these are all little things. And I tell my students to go try this. If you find something, that's what the practice trap is for. Mm-hmm. But here's your deal. Don't give up on what your original settings are. Make sure you know where your cone light is. Document your firearm. This is, I learned this from Mikey Tellis a long time ago. You've got to document stuff. Mike's not, Mike probably, as far as a shooter, we all know him. I mean, the game is made up of Mike Tellis. Really. Yeah. If it wasn't, this game doesn't survive on you guys, us. It survived on the B shooter, the C shooter. I mean, Mike's been shooting for 30-something years.
Well, And he's
he
a tweaker. He, you know, I remember doing lessons with him, and I had him breaking targets, and he's like, "What? Let me." I'm like, you leave everything the same, the consistency. That's how you become a top shooter, you know.
But it's not gonna, Mike. It's not gonna happen for Mike's. But he enjoys what, you know, being to be able to come talk to us and have a beer with us, or, you know, talk stuff. That's his part of the game. That's what keeps him coming back. And we have to realize that too, as top shooters, that there are people out there. You know, we have to be. I feel to be an All-American is a lot more than being just say you're an All-American. You have to be approachable with people. You know, I know Ricky is, and I know you are, Zach, in because they want to talk to us, and we should make ourselves available to them. We owe that to them. Forget about the clinic stuff, and you know, I don't care about that. Yeah. If I can help somebody, you know, stay in this game, or give them a little tip that makes them happy, and that's what we're here for, to help each other, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think the ultimate goal is growing the sport of trap and seeing people.
Absolutely.
And like you said, your son's, you know, doing what he's doing now, but he was a shooter, and he's going to come back around, and everybody comes back around. And I think when people get frustrated and they're in that hole and they're like, man, I don't know what to do. Well, then you lose your friends. And that's the best part of this game, is keeping them around. So I really believe that's why we started this podcast in the first place, just to give as much good information as we can to the listeners, to the shooters, to the people that are going through difficulties. I mean, just today alone, talking about your left eye dominant issue, that's going to help so many people alone. And I really appreciate you giving that knowledge, and it's important. Picking it on that just a little bit more, I've come across, and you guys can tell me this if you haven't or not, but I've come across a few students now who are right eye dominant, but they cross dominant to the left as they're going to a target, or when they're moving on post 1 or post 2. Do you guys ever see that happening? I mean, someone that truly is right eye dominant, and it like flip dominant, like depending on light or depending on how they're set up, the dominancy will change from eye to eye. Is that something you've come across?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I do.
So what do you think is a cure for that person when it's not always left eye dominant or not always right eye dominant?
I don't think it's 100% cure, Zach. I think that you do the best you can. You have the blinder, or you go to the tube site like Ricky did, like he was talking about. You can try different things, but it's, you know, fatigue, you know, and this is one thing they don't talk about so much in the game. And actually, I just did a podcast with my son on his strength and conditioning. I know for me, getting older, you got to get in shape. You really, I mean, if you look at a lot of people in this game, they're big people. I mean, look, Ricky, I mean, they can take that torquing from that 12 gauge shotgun. I mean, shooting 300 targets a day, shooting 300,000 rounds. My body has been beat up over 47 years. Trust me. I got to get stronger. And if you get, and there's, back in the day, and I used to do them a lot, was the eye exercises. Remember the ball cord, you know, the 3 little balls on the cord, and working your eyes up and down the string. You have to exercise your eyes like you exercise your body. You know, if it only buys you 1 or 2 targets, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's huge in an all around and overall. And Zach, touching on what you were talking about, and Mike's right, the fatigue. A lot of it has to do with newer shooters when they switch. I've seen with not staying locked into the gun, and their head comes off, and then they're moving their head around. I mean, there's a lot of things without seeing someone actually do it. It all pertains. But going back, like we're talking with Mike, and I think this is probably, Zach, one of our better examples that we've had on the podcast of with Mike. I mean, he's an All-American trap shooter, multiple time, you know, state times, champion. Right? 13 times, but multiple state championships, zone championships, satellite grand American, you know, wins, blah, blah, blah. But he was determined to be a 2-eyed shooter. So for the listeners out there, and I tell people this in my clinics all the time, when I ask you to try something and you're going to do it, we're not just going to do it for 25. We're not going to do it for 50. Right. This is, you want to put it in your repertoire, you're going to give it your 100%. Well, Mike gave it 100%, like you said, 8,000 rounds. That's commitment. So you have to commit to the process, or the process isn't going to work. And it's we don't all become champions just out of the womb. I mean,
100%.
it's you have to give 100%, and the trial and error. So with him saying that, just so listeners understand, I mean, 8,000 targets he suffered, and his ego took a hit, you know, and his confidence took a hit, but he was committed to the process. So when you're committed, the end result is here.
And Ricky can attest to it too. We see this in our clinics. People take our clinics and they'll come like one time, and then you never hear from them again. Yep. And then you see them down the road, and they're either the same or they're worse. You got to have that commitment to a program. I don't care who you pick for.
Yep.
Like I said, try everybody, get your own style, but then you have to commit to it. You have to work at it. You know, the biggest mistake I tell people in practice, I say, "Oh, we're going to go practice." Yeah. What are you going to practice? And they go, "What do you mean?" I said, "What are you going to practice?" "We're going to go shoot." No, that's not practice. When I go practice, I'm going to do the off the corner drill. Well, what's that? I said, "Well, you learned it in the clinic. How come you're not doing it?" And if I get a repeat person, I ask, "Well, how many of the, off the corner drills have you done? How many of the shoot the piece drills have you done?" "Well, I just thought that was for the clinic." No, that's what I do. When I go practice, I will do all these things to help myself get ready for the match. To go out and shoot 25 singles targets to break 25, to me, is boring, and you're not learning anything. Period.
100%.
We have to practice with a purpose.
Making the practice harder than what your event is how
Absolutely.
you excel to the next level. I remember one of the drills that I used to do was in singles, I would shoot wobbles, or I would add speed to the target, or I would start working on the whole point drills, like you said, where you're learning. But back to Mike Tullis, writing down where you are and knowing where home is before you go try something else and start getting too far away from your island. Because I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to hold high gun, and I can do it, but it's just not my preferred method of shooting. But when I went to do it, I knew exactly where everything was. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go high hold. And I went 2,500 rounds trying it to say, okay, this is what I like about it, and this is what I don't like about it. And to this day, I can go out there and pull that gun out and be like, you know what? We're sitting here. It's in Kansas. We got that 60-mile-an-hour face wind, and I've got that high hold move. But I don't bring it out when I'm in Tucson. You know, I'm not bringing it out most days of the week, at least for me.
You know, I think the guys like Ricky and I watched, and because if you have the other type, what am I looking for? Sean Hawley, same way, down. You never lose sight of the target.
Nope.
You know, it goes above you. It's right there, and you just got to go up and touch it. But they wanted to go to this, side movement and do all that, shoot 130% high guns. If you can do that and you're successful, God bless you. It's just not my style.
Yeah,
it's just not my style. So again, I tell people, try it. Read the target. When you're shooting targets, especially at singles, if you're taking the bottoms off, well, maybe you need a little bit more gun movement, a little bit more gun speed, until you center up on that target. So that's a big thing that I try to teach people. Read your breaks. Some people say, we can't do that. Well, okay, you can't do it. Well, that's what I do. When we're right in the middle of it, we got a lot of confidence with this big smoke ball out there.
Yeah, Zach, when we shoot a lot together, Zach's on the low end of the smoke ball contest with me and Bullard.
Yeah, but you got to, hey, Zach, let me tell you something. When you add them up at the end, they don't grade them, they just score them.
Exactly.
He's still on the low end, Mike.
He'll get there. He's coming.
He can't stop jabbing at me. He loves it too much.
I love it.
Going into your smoke balls, are you a tight choke believer? Or are you changing chokes between handicap, doubles, singles, or what's that situation going on? Because I know we've had a lot of listeners ask about point of impact. They've asked about chokes. What do you got going on for setup? What kind of gun are you using?
Well, I use the traditional K80. I've gone to Ricky. I went to Ricky because he, went to shoot that trap special, shot shoots it like we don't even have to talk about that.
Yeah,
It
we
just
didn't talk
wasn't-
about him.
It wasn't the gun for me. And I was so used to the other gun and I just stuck with it. I just worked with a guy named Russ Diasualdo. Russ is from Colorado. We spent a year and a half building the stock. And everything that I've learned that I wanted to put into it, Russ was just a great wealth of knowledge for me. So, I'm going to start with a new stock out at the Spring Grand. For singles, I'll use Oyster choke. They made me like 22,000. It's a modified choke for singles. It hits them just as hard as a 35,000. Remember, the constriction doesn't necessarily mean, that it's full or whatever. I mean, these guys that have refined this, this choking thing. I mean, I've seen some chokes that you'd say 22,000 and it looks like you're hitting them with, 40,000.
Now, what choke was that? Was that Wilkinson?
No, there's an Oyster, Jimmy Oyster.
I don't even know if I've heard of that.
Yeah,
Ohio.
he took a screw-in choke and he put it in there for me on one of the barrels I had. And then I had Kerry Outdoor did my handicap barrel for which I kind of like that barrel. Tommy did my over and unders. And again, once I get it where I want it, I usually don't touch it too much.
You have 3 barrels?
Yeah. Get 3 barrels. The handicap barrel is 34,000, and Kerry Outdoor did that barrel for me. And the other one's 1828, the over and under that Tommy did for me. And then the Oyster one, I can put in anything I want because it's a screw choke.
Okay. Well, that's really cool. Is the point of impact all the same on those, or?
Yeah, they all run around about 100% high, 90, 10, 100% high, for where I'm going. You got to remember now, here's the other fly in the ointment is I shoot double release triggers. Now, the release trigger system, you have to find a really good mechanic to work on your triggers because it's just such a different horse. The pull triggers, you can be a little bit, off on that. Not much, but boy, you're off on a release trigger, you got problems.
So Mike, anything new going on with you? Are you getting ready? I know you're coming to the Spring Grand, and then after the Spring Grand, what's your next shoots for the season?
Well, actually, Teresa and I are leaving Thursday. We just got whacked with 18 inches of snow and more coming, but we're heading to the Silver Dollar.
Okay.
We're going to be there for 2 months. I'm going to be doing some privates down there, and then, of course, shooting at the Southern Grand, the Florida State, and maybe the Jacobson or whatever. Just kind of roll out, do what we got to do. You got to shoot with Debbie and Dawn Nielsen, Debbie Nielsen, which is a good squad to be with. A lot of fun. I get to see, Kay and spend some time with him and all our people that we get to see down there. I mean, you get to see Ricky, you see you, Zach. I mean, that's the fun part of it. Then out to the Spring Grand, and for February, do that shoot, that 10-day shoot, come back. We're gonna head up to Kentucky. Teresa and I are going up there to, do some sightseeing, and then over to the next shoot we'll have is the Keystone in Elysburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And then, the PA state and just all that. We want to try to go around to some different states too and see some other, we've got invites all over the country to come shoot, but it's just finding the time to do it.
Are you going to come out and shoot Ohio State shoot or not?
I have never shot at the Cardinal Center. Never shot there. Never fired a shot there.
It's your year.
And I do want to do it sometime. It just hasn't worked for me as far as, the scheduling. There was that time, and Ricky, you can relate to this. When I was up to when I won the Play Target, the doubles championship, and the all around for the sub vet in 2013, I was just coming back into it because I took some time off, Teresa and I to spend time with Jake.
Yeah.
We went to AAU basketball games. We went to, football games. We went to track meets, and I didn't want to miss that.
Yep.
I didn't want to miss that. Ricky's got Tyler with him. He gets to spend some time, which I think is super. And
It makes it fun again.
He does.
It does. It makes it fun. So I don't regret not staying in and go, pounding every week and shooting all those targets, because this is another thing for this sport. If you can stay relatively healthy, you can come back and be competitive at a later age in your life. Teresa's starting to shoot a little bit more, and here's the other deal. Can't teach your wife. So I hand her over to Ricky.
I know.
Ricky, take her to the trap. Do what you got to do.
Every time, PA, Teresa's like, are you going to help me? Because Mike can't.
Yeah. It's incredible. But I want her to have a good time too, because we're traveling around and stuff, and she's competitive. That woman.
Oh, yeah.
Is competitive.
That's a fact. Now, is she coming to Tucson with you?
No. She's going to stay down in Florida.
Okay.
And then she has some friends down there. She's going to hang around there and, enjoy the pool, the warm weather. I mean, as the older I get, we like a little bit of the warm weather. And, she lets me, she knows I'm okay because I'm out there with Mike Pillas. So
you're out there with your second wife, Mike.
Yes, my friend.
Mr.
My great friend.
You're a sightseer. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, he is my great friend. I've been with Mike, and I've been friends for 20 plus years. He's
a great guy.
Anything for anybody.
Oh,
He
yeah.
is that type of person. And again, another type of people you meet in the game. And, I get to, go out there. That's where I get to see all my friends that I only get to see once a year at the Grand. Because not many people come east.
No, I try to. I mean, I always come to PA. I'm trying to get Zach to come out there, but
I'm probably coming this year. I'm getting
he's scared.
People, I gotta come, but
He's scared.
Rick, and I really and I should say respect people that this is not an easy target out here.
No,
unless you shoot it, you don't know the difference.
It's different.
It takes me a long time to get used to the Tucson target. It takes me 3 or 4 days because I see it so good. I jump it, and I got to slow down.
You're like, these are too easy. What do I do?
Well, sort of that way. It's the visibility that I see. Back here, we have so much different backgrounds. We have wind conditions. You guys have that too. It's just a different track. Look at the clubs that we go to.
well, and a lot of people don't understand where Mike's at, and I've taught at the gun club there. I mean, it's a tree line. I remember like the 50-yard stake was cut out, notched, and I'm like, the trees are like 35 yards. So you got a target, Zach, that a true 50-yard target. If you didn't break it, it was hitting a tree and breaking in the air.
Hey, I just
The
timed that
best
shot
target. It
right.
was tough. Well, it don't work that way, but people from the West Coast or the Midwest that don't see those targets, and then they look in trap, because I've heard this my whole shooting career. God, you look at the scores from the New England states, the scores are low. I said, well, the background, what do you mean? I mean, we have background here. I'm like, no.
It's different.
We got flat ground.
Go
I go, you
shoot
go out
it.
there.
Go shoot it, and then tell me what you think. And that's really
Exactly.
all you can tell people that haven't been up to New York, that haven't been up to PA, that haven't shot those places. I've been there and shot them when I was a kid, and it was a humbling experience. And I'm looking forward to getting up there. I'm thinking about going to the Empire Grand this year. So, we're going to get back up there and shoot some rough stuff. But
Yep. Cicero's a great place to shoot at. I've been there a few times and shot. I've been fortunate to won a few events and championships, but it's not just your everyday easy target,
it really isn't. But you're a wealth of knowledge. I know we could go for 3 hours straight talking to you because you've got so much stuff. Is there any sponsors that you'd like to thank before we get out of here today?
Yeah, of course, Dieter and Betty Krieghoff have been with me for a long, long time. Great people, classy people, great organization, and a great product. I mean, it's just a great product. And of course, Remington, I'm proud to be back with the Remington team after being, they kind of didn't have a team for a while. I was with them, in fact, I was back with them in 2000 area, and to be back with them now, and I like where it's going. I mean, my teammates that are on it, great people, great shots, represent good ambassadors to the game, quality ammunition, and very, very grateful because, I didn't feel that, I'm not of a certain caliber, but, as Mike said, he says, we're looking for people that are approachable. They're good shots, but we're looking for people that are approachable and will talk to the public for us and be a good ambassador for our sport. So I appreciate it.
Well, I know they're proud to have you, and I will say that you are definitely of the caliber. And we appreciate you sharing your insight, and I know we're going to want to have you on here again. That being said, we would like to thank our show sponsors, Wenig behind Ricky there, Lincoln, Missouri, Luke and Bobby Chambers. They're great people, and give them a chance. Obviously, Krieghoff Guns, because they support all of us on the show today.
Yes.
And Remington Arms for stepping up and supporting us and our listeners. So this has been a great episode. One last thing before I get out of here. If people want to take a lesson from you, Mike, or do one of your classes, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Is there a website? Is it a phone number, email? What's the best way for the listeners to get a hold of Mr. Blaisdell?
Well, you can go around the Krieghoff website under the pro instructor area. All my contact information is right there. But if you want to send me an email, it's mjbtrap@gmail.com or 603-313-9788. Be happy to talk to you and see if we can help out.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today, Mike, and it's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you really soon.
And we'll see you guys very soon.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, Mike.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.